Welcome back to the shop. We're back to work on the Kearney & Trecker 2HL horizontal milling machine today. This is a trip dog for the Z-axis power feed. It mounts into a channel on the left side of the mill, and there's a lever that would engage with it either from the bottom or above that will kick out the Z-axis power feed. I only have this one, so I need to make a second. These are a couple of 3D prints that I made based on some dimensions I was given for the table feed trip dogs. There's one for the left side and one for the right. They're essentially mirror images of each other. Now again, the mill didn't have any on the table, so I'm going to need to make these as well. I have this piece of stock from the scrap shelf that I think I should be able to get all three pieces out of this one. I just need to cut it down into three pieces and start milling it from there. Well, here's my piece of stock fresh out of the bandsaw. It's cut into three equalish sized pieces, and these should serve well to make these three different trip dogs. One for the Z-axis and two for the X-axis. And I think I'm going to turn my attention here over to the shaper and use it to square up and size these pieces to their largest dimension, and then go to the Bridgeport to mill out any of the individual features. Well, as much as I would have liked to finish those out on the shaper, I was having some trouble getting a decent surface finish. I was getting some very strange step overs. So I'm going to go ahead and resort to using the Bridgeport to finish getting them to size and then mill the features. Since two of these pieces are identical, I can put them both in the vise at the same time and mill them together. We'll have all three pieces milled down to size, and now it will be a matter of milling in each of the features. I'm going to use some blue Dykem on each of these pieces so I can scribe some layout lines. I'll be using the DRO, but I want to use these lines as kind of a guide to make sure I don't make any stupid mistakes. Since these lines are really just going to be as a guide, an anti-bozo guide, I use my digital calipers and I try to set them to within a half of a thousandth or so of the desired dimension. And then I just put a really light scribe line into the die. So this piece here is for the Z-axis trip dog. I did make a mistake here. When I sized the stock, I made it a little bit too short, but I took some measurements on the machine, and that small discrepancy won't have any effect on how it operates. Now the table trip dogs, these other two pieces, there are a lot of features on them that have to be milled correctly. So I'm really going to take advantage of this, of using these layout lines, just to make sure that when I put it in the machine that I'm orienting things correctly and I don't end up milling a feature on the wrong side of the stock. Now the angled lines that I'm scribing here are for those ramps, and I need to mill away material to create them. In this case here, I will be using these scribe lines to mill to, rather than try to figure out what that angle is and set up a sign bar or something like that. They're not critical. If they're off by 10 thousandths, it's not going to affect the operation of the trip dog. So when we get over to the mill, I'll show you how I mill these. I'm going to start with the simpler of the three, which is the Z-axis trip dog. Using the edge finder here to find the edges and the center of the piece. Since I had the drill chuck already in the spindle, we'll go ahead and start by drilling the through hole for the mounting bolt. We'll start by spotting this with a stubby 120 degree spotting drill. I have a 29/64 drill bit in the spindle now, which should be the clearance for a 7/16 inch bolt. I removed the drill chuck from the spindle and have replaced it with a 3/8 inch 4-flute end mill to mill the remainder of the features in this part. I set this up so that I could do all of the drilling and milling operations in one setup. And here's the finished part as compared to the original that was on the machine. I don't know if this is original K&T or if it was shop made by someone else. I don't have any other references to what these things look like. It is a little bit shorter, but when I measure the machine where it's going to go, it'll work perfectly without any issues. We can move on now and start milling the table trip dogs. And here's where I'm using those angled lines. I'm going to line them up with a parallel and clamp it in the vise so I can mill out those ramps. I've got the edge finder and a 3/8 collet here. I just need to find the front edge of this piece of material. And with that same 4-flute 3/8 inch end mill, I'm milling away the material until I get down to that angled scribe line. With the milling on this first ramp complete, I'll put the other blank in and mill the corresponding ramp on it. Since both of these pieces are identically sized and the only differences are on the front face, I'm going to clamp both of them in the vise here and finish milling the back sides at the same time. I'll start by drilling the through holes for the 7/16 inch mounting bolts. The final milling operations will be to mill the keys that fit in the slot on the front of the table. Well, with only having the one Z-axis power feed trip dog, it probably goes without saying that I only had one bolt. So I need to make 3 more. I dug through the scrap bin and came up with this piece of material, which has a diameter that's large enough to get me the right sized square head on it, and it's got enough length here that I should be able to get 3 bolts out of it. I need to turn this down for 7/16 in order to cut the threads on it. I do wish I knew what kind of material this was, because it was a joy to machine. Here I'm taking a full 100,000th depth of cut. I haven't actually been able to do that with other material on this lathe. Usually with the harder stuff I can only get maybe 15 or 20 thousandths, but this is pretty good. 200 thousandths off the diameter. Sure, it's chattering a little bit, but I'll take that in order to machine this a little bit more efficiently, since I do have to make 3 of them. Well, we're going to turn the threads here using a thread insert to single point thread it. I don't have a decent 7/16 14 die. The one that I do have is just a piece of junk. Well, I don't have it anymore because I just threw it in the recycle bin. So we're going to go ahead and blue this up and cut this 14 TPI. A little while ago, I bought a machinist tool chest off of some guy that was emptying a house, and it was chock full of cutting tools, including this brazed on piece of carbide that's profiled for a round over. So I want to give this bolt a nice rounded over appearance to match the one that was on the machine. I thought it was a nice look anyway. The last operation here on the lathe will be to cut it off to length. I have a 5C collet here in the collet block. I'll put the bolt in here and tighten this down so we can mill the head of it square. Well, with an end mill in the spindle of the Bridgeport, I'll touch off here on the top of the round part of the bolt head here. Back that off, and then I can raise the table the amount that I need in order to get the right sized square head on the end of this. Well, with one side done, I can now do this 3 more times and I'll have me a square-headed bolt. Well, here are all the pieces all done. I had made these other nuts out of some hex stock that I had, but I've got now 4 bolts, 2 Z-axis stop blocks, one that I had to make, and then 2 stop blocks for the table. Get these mounted on the machine and give them a try. Well, we're getting both of these stop blocks mounted to a channel on the left side of the column. This arm here that is between the 2 stop blocks will cause the power feed to be disengaged when it hits one of the blocks. Here I hope you can see that when I engage the power feed to go down, when that lever hits that stop block, it forces the handle back into the center position. Same thing as it's moving up, when the lever hits the top stop block, it forces the hand control back into the center position. We'll put the table stop blocks on here and we'll give these a test run. Well, this isn't quite working as expected. The little tang on the end of the power feed handle got caught on the stop block. It should have been tripped by that round boss, and you can see when I push it the other direction, it also seemed to get caught. Here on the other side, I flipped that handle up so it wouldn't get caught, and you can see how the circular boss is supposed to stop it, but here it didn't. It actually moved past it. Well, here's a different angle. You can kind of see how the handle gets drug a little bit but then goes back, and then that round boss catches the ramp, and that's what's supposed to trigger it off, and it just barely doesn't do it. You may also see it get hung up here when I've gone past the power feed stop and I'm returning back the other direction, how that tang gets caught on the end of the stop block. Well, I might have to remake these because this isn't what it needs to be doing.
The next day.
Well, I ended up out in the shop until about 2 a.m. because I remade both of these trip dogs. That tang on the end of the handle no longer gets caught on the trip dog, and the boss is landing in the right location and properly shutting off the power feed. Somewhere along the line, I transposed a couple of dimensions. This block I thought was supposed to be 1 1/8 inches deep and 1 1/4 inches tall, and I had those backwards. You can see here with the old one on the left, it's just a little bit too shallow, which didn't kick the handle out to stop it at the right point. And then it was hanging down too low, which made it easy for that tang to get caught on it. I ran this back and forth probably a good dozen times after this just to make sure, and it performed without failure every single one of those times. So I feel pretty confident that these are now dimensioned properly to function the way they were intended. Those old pieces went right into the recycle bin. I don't have a shelf of shame or a box of shame for parts that I've screwed up because, quite frankly, I'm not one of those people that particularly cares to dwell on past failures. I prefer to learn from them, not make the mistake again, and just move forward. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, and that also completes the major components for the 2HL horizontal mill. Although I could probably put a cutter in the spindle and make some chips, I'm going to wait until I get the overarm supports done and I can mount up an arbor and some kind of a cutter in that, and then we'll give it a try. That'll all be coming up on a future video. So if you'd like to see what this machine can do, subscribe and hit that bell icon so you'll get notified when I publish another update. And until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.